Ravens flock, how you guys doing today? So I got a quick question. It's kind of been on my mind the last few days. So the Ravens play their preseason game against the Cowboys tomorrow, and it was already announced that the same people that didn't play in the first preseason game aren't going to play in this preseason game. So obviously that means the starters will not be participating in the second preseason game. So we've already gotten, that notification, so we know they're not going to be out there. But there is one more preseason game left against the Washington Commanders. And with this joint practice now being canceled, I find it very interesting to bring up this question now. Do you guys think the Ravens will actually play their starters in that third preseason game? More so, should they? Would it be seen as beneficial for the Ravens to play their starters in that third preseason game next week against the Washington Commanders? The reason I ask this is because of two things. One, the joint practice being canceled, which again is a little bit huge because, you would like to be able to go up against somebody else other than your defense. I know the starters for sure are getting tired of going up against each other every day in practice. They want to go up against someone else, which is why the Colts joint practice was beneficial for them. But now you don't have that with this Commanders joint practice. So now it's just straight up practice against each other until the first game on Sunday Night Football against the Bills. So with that in mind, do you guys think they're going to actually make the attempt and put their starters out there for a drive or two against the Commanders? More so, would it be beneficial for them? Because when you take a look at the Ravens schedule, I feel that there is a level of alertedness, as well as an understanding as to how difficult their schedule is. So the margin of error for them is 0. Just taking a look at their schedule, because I do have it up right here. To start things off, week 1 on the road, Sunday Night Football against the Buffalo Bills. Week 2 at home against the Cleveland Browns. Week 3 on primetime at home against the Lions. Week 4, 425 game on the road against Kansas City. Then you come back home to go up against the Houston Texans. And then you're going to be at home once again to take on the LA Rams. I mean, when you take a look at this schedule, it's pretty tough. And then you have your bye week after the Rams game. So you're going up against 5 playoff teams in your first 6 games. And then you got the Browns, who always play us tough because their defense is so great. They match up well against what we like to do. So you've got tough games to start the season. And now that you don't have this joint practice, it really is just them practicing against each other, which, you would like to get some live game action. Would it be beneficial for the Ravens to actually let their starters play? Now, we all know this. Ravens don't play their starters. I was actually going back yesterday and, well, not yesterday, last night. I was actually, going back and looking at some of Lamar's old highlights. And then it popped in my mind, man, Lamar has not played in the preseason for a while. It used to be Lamar playing in the preseason. Obviously, his rookie year, 2018, he played in all the preseason games. He was a rookie. Flacco was already the starter. There was no need for Flacco to play, though he did play one preseason game against the Colts, and they looked great there, so it was all good. But Lamar played all those preseason games. In 2019, he played in 2 preseason games, so they still had him participating in the preseason game. Then 2020, he played in another preseason game, which is of course the game against the Commanders, ironically, in which J.K. Dobbins suffered that season-ending injury. That was during the 2021 season, which again was a horrible season for the Ravens in general because everybody was suffering torn Achilles and torn ACLs and season-ending injuries. I mean, you lost Justice Hill. I believe you lost both, Justice Hill and Marcus Peters within practice, and then you lose J.K. Dobbins as well. You lost everybody. So that was just a horrible year. But 2021 was the last time. 2021 was the last time that the Ravens actually played anybody in the preseason. Because 2018, yeah, 2019, yeah. I don't know if I don't even know. Well, there was no preseason games during the 2020 season because of the I'm getting it confused. Either way, Lamar had played in some previous preseason games beforehand. It wasn't until the J.K. Dobbins injury that they stopped trying to put their starters in for preseason games. So 22, he wasn't out there, obviously coming off injury. They're not going to test that. 23, they're not testing that coming off of injury. He was healthy all of that 2023 season. Got to the AFC title game. Back for 2024, they still didn't want to test it. He was healthy all last year. And again, he's healthy, he's fine. And here we are in 2025. first preseason game, starters didn't play. This upcoming preseason game, starters not playing. That third preseason game, is it possible that they do put them out there? Again, we got to start off fast. We've got to start off fast, specifically because we've got 5 playoff teams within our first 6 games of the season. You don't want to come out sluggish. You don't want to come out rusty. We tried that last year when we went up against the Kansas City Chiefs. And I will say in that game, we didn't look rusty, but there were definitely some moments where you're like, it would have been a little bit beneficial if they would have been able to play in the preseason game, particularly with the illegal formations. Because, I mean, if they would have had their starters out there in the preseason game, they probably would have blown the whistle on those illegal formations. And they probably would have known to make those adjustments. I don't know. Maybe I'm just nitpicking. I see the benefits of playing your starters in the preseason to give them some sort of action, to get them a little bit prepared for the regular season. Obviously, they don't really need that because they're ready to go straight off week 1. These are veterans, but it does help to knock off that rust. Though the opening drive of the game is where you can knock off the rust. Hell, if you gotta take the whole first quarter to knock off the rust, you will knock off the rust. We had that happen in 2023 against the Houston Texans week 1. That whole first quarter, arguably the first half, we had to knock out the rust, but we still won that game like 25-9, so we were fine. And then week 2, Lamar looked great, and Lamar looked like Lamar against the Bengals and did what he always does. So, week 1 kind of feels like that preseason game if you don't play your starters. But we can't really look at week 1 to be a preseason game when you're going up against the Buffalo Bills. And that is an important game because you were essentially looking to fight with the Bills and the Chiefs for playoff seeding. You're fighting with those teams for home field advantage. So you can't afford to make those mistakes. You get Buffalo week 1, you get Kansas City week 4. You can't afford to make those mistakes against those two. You have to win those games if you're trying to get home field advantage. So those are games you cannot be sluggish in. You made the mistakes last year in some of those early games, and it ultimately cost you an opportunity to at least, have the divisional round game be in Baltimore instead of Buffalo. If you won that Cleveland game, we would have hosted the Bills in the divisional round, but that's a different conversation. But yeah, you don't want to come out sluggish. And normally I wouldn't even bring this up, but since that joint practice has been canceled with the Commanders, it's really making me think John Harbaugh might put his starters out there for a drive or two. They may be willing to risk it, but you got Buffalo in week 1, and you can't afford to be sluggish and come out rusty against them. You just can't afford to do so. So it's really making me think that John Harbaugh might give the starters a drive or two. Lamar has always been down to play in the preseason. He's never had a problem with it, but again, it's the coach's decision. The coach decides whether or not the starters are going to play in the preseason. It just comes down to that. I've just been thinking about that the last 2 days because I was watching his preseason highlights and I was thinking, man, we don't really play Lamar in the preseason anymore. Ever since the J.K. Dobbins injury, we stopped doing that, which again, I understand why we did, but it's led us to come out kind of sluggish in some of the games. I'm just thinking about it. Yeah, 23, we came out sluggish. Against Kansas City, a little bit early on, we came out sluggish, not to mention the illegal formations that kept happening. They could have addressed that, like I said earlier. So, yeah, I mean, there was some sluggishness, but I don't think it overall stopped us from still performing because, again, these are veterans. They understand what they got to do. They're more than ready to just get going week 1 straight up. But it doesn't hurt to at least get a little bit of work in, heading in the preseason, heading into the week 1 matchup against Buffalo. But it's Harbaugh's choice with the joint practice now being canceled and them no longer being able to go up against another team in practice. It's up to Harbaugh to decide whether or not they should get a little bit of action against another opponent before that matchup in Buffalo, or if he feels comfortable not putting his starters in, doesn't want to take those risks and says we'll be good to go week 1 and we'll be prepared. It's up to him. Anyway, I wanted to ask you guys that and just get my thoughts out about it because I've been thinking about it the last 24 hours, and I feel that Harbaugh might be willing to do so because of that joint practice ending, but who knows? Anyway, guys, that's pretty much all I have for you. Not much to really talk about today. Tomorrow's the preseason game, and we'll have plenty to talk about then. So yeah, I'll see you guys later. Take care. Stay safe. Peace out.